Latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. When we took up Governor Jellybelly's mandatory mental health screening law the other week, mentioned some of the problems here because on the face of it, we just want to screen children in schools to identify children that may be struggling with mental health issues so that they can get the treatment they need. That's how it's being sold. That sounds eminently reasonable, doesn't it? But then you have to take a step back and say, well, is this the right environment to do that? Are these the right people to do that? And I'm not talking about teachers or administrators, but even so-called therapists in a K through 12 government school environment, because what the law will do, is make mandatory mental health screenings for kids in grades 3 through 12, unless the parents opt out. Well, there's a good piece in City Journal that I mentioned in our previous discussion. I'll mention it again. This by an analyst over at the Manhattan Institute. Experts caution against universal mental health assessments, even when they're administered by licensed physicians in primary care settings. One reason is that such screenings, whether for depression, behavioral or emotional risk, or suicide, lack any empirical support to show that they prevent mental health challenges from developing or help those in need of services to get them sooner. In other words, you want to see a manifestation so that you can apply expertise in treating a particular manifestation. Another, back to the article, is that universal assessments can yield more than 50% false positives, resulting in inappropriate diagnoses and unnecessary treatments. That's not a small margin of error. That's why experts believe that screening is, quote unquote, unethical, actually, unless schools have the resources to ensure accurate diagnoses, treatment, and follow-up. Since Illinois schools are not clinical settings, there is not even a chance they can deliver on any of those prerequisites for what experts in the field have described as ethical mental health screenings. By the way, giving children an inaccurate diagnosis can harm their well-being. Even if a correct diagnosis has potential downsides, it does not explain the cause of a mental health problem, can lock a child into a label, and does not guarantee access to the right treatments. For some young people, medical diagnoses, including mental health diagnoses, can shape their identity and expectations, lead to long-term medication use, affect job prospects, diminish their sense of control over the future. These are documented realities. There's, not an insubstantial amount of research into this. For example, a 2-year follow-up assessment of a randomized control trial in psychotherapy for kids with respect to psychotherapy was found to offer little benefit for children's mental health. Randomized control trials for youth use of antidepressants have found similarly weak effects, meaning these treatments should be used when cases are serious, not as a universal first-order solution. Several forms of school-based mental health services, mental health centers, mindfulness trainings, universal cognitive behavioral therapy programs, and efforts to prevent depression and anxiety have also been shown not to work. Practices that researchers describe as evidence-based are typically demonstrated in clinical settings and are often incorrectly implemented in schools. And it goes on from there. One other aspect, since Jellybelly, the governor of Illinois, has made this claim, he makes it all the time to sound like he is empathetic. Well, his empathy is of the pathological and disingenuous variety. He claims that it lowers the stigma associated with mental health screenings. But as the author of this analysis writes, that coin has two sides. Normalizing behaviors such as seeking a mental health diagnosis can make them spread. Some researchers find that reducing stigma around suicide, for example, can inadvertently normalize it. And stigma argument is thin, given that teachers report that kids are regularly diagnosing themselves with mental health conditions. Sure, there's the social contagion aspect of it that generates attention just like we talk about with the mental health condition of pretending you're a girl when you're a boy, or pretending you're a boy when you're actually a girl. So, lots of downsides, and it's difficult based on the science and data to identify the upsides, particularly the preemptive universal screening in the non-clinical setting of government schools. It's a pretty comprehensive repudiation of this idea. But I know the sentimentalist nature of it has great appeal. Congressman Mary Miller is a representative from Illinois' 15th. She joins us now to discuss what she is doing in response to the law that we've been discussing. Congressman Miller, thanks for joining us.
Well, good morning. Thank you for allowing me to talk about this important subject. This is our number one responsibility, is to protect our children. And I was very alarmed when I found out that this was their plan. We cannot trust these people in charge. And I'm a mom. I have 7 children, and I can attest to the fact that a lot of times parents are the last to know about what is going on in school or what kind of testing is going on. So I had the idea that we require a written opt-in protection. So I have a bill called Parents Opt-in Protection Act, and it's going to amend existing federal law to require written consent for any type of survey, analysis, or evaluation.
And so this would be federal statutes that would be applicable to all schools across the country. This is not obviously specific to Illinois because it's federal legislation.
Yes, because garbage like this is like a contagion, and you could see it spreading to other states too. Illinois is the first state to require this.
Right, first state to require this. So this is precedent setting, and this is why you're essentially intervening over the top. And the opt-in versus opt-out, right? Right now in Illinois, there's an opt-out option. And you're saying, no. When it comes to K through 12 and to institute something like this, we want it to be opt-in instead. Why do you favor opt-in versus opt-out?
Well, first of all, opt-out, it's complicated. People have to go find the forms. That's what parents are doing now. It doesn't start till 2027, but parents are on it right now. Mm-hmm. But also the parent has to know about it. And that's why I want all evaluations and tests like this to be opt-in. So parents have to want this. It can't be done by the school by default because the parents didn't know about it.
Have you?
And the whole thing is ridiculous. Their primary task is to educate our children, and they are failing at it. And now they want to turn our schools into mental health facilities.
Yeah, and I assume, like many state legislators, you've been hearing a lot about this legislation and now law from your constituents in Southern Illinois.
Yes, they're concerned about it. They're alarmed, and parents don't want time in the classroom spent on this. They don't want the money spent. Anybody that knows what's going on knows that these tests could have life consequences for their children because they'll be labeled. This will be part of their permanent record. Maybe it will trigger DCFS to come out. I can just imagine the kind of questions they're going to ask them about gender, about guns, about religion, politics, leading perverted sexual questions. I've seen some of those in tests over the years, and we cannot trust these people. These people cannot define what a woman is. They cannot agree that they should protect our girls in their private spaces. So they should not be trusted to give our children mental health exams.
That's really the fundamental issue, isn't it? I mean, in addition to sort of the mission focus where there is general failure, the reading, writing, critical thinking, this is another gambit to diminish parental rights, isn't it?
Yes, and I'm a strong supporter of parental rights. And I want to implore the listeners today, parents, grandparents, you cannot be passive. You have to be involved with your children's education. Talk to them every day about what's going on in the classroom. Look at their books. If they're given a novel to read and you're not familiar with it, look up the review on the internet or read it alongside of your children. This is the only way that we can hold the schools accountable, is if parents do not abdicate their responsibility. And communities thrive when parents and schools work together. Parents should be in the driver's seat on everything, including these tests, which this is what my bill does. It puts parents in the driver's seat instead of the schools automatically doing mental testing on your children. You are going to have to give written consent for it.
The legislation is entitled the Parents Opt-in Protection Act, sponsored by Congressman Mary Miller. Congressman Miller, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And she joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Are you turning 65 and thinking about Medicare? Or are you over 65 and haven't enrolled yet because you still have coverage at work? Either way, Medicare done correctly will be the best health insurance you will ever have. Imagine having an annual deductible of only $257.